The same way there's weak people in society, there's very smart people in society. If we let them accumulate capital, they're going to be so rich. They don't need to be that rich. Nobody needs to be that rich. Even if you see the most important people, the most rich people in the world, like Steve Jobs and Bill Gates, they're not going to give the money to their kids. They understand the danger of somebody having so much money without earning it. So it's important that we give incentives to people to get richer, because that gives money to the government. But we shouldn't encourage them to be just rich, because at one point, money doesn't mean anything to them. It's a rule of economy that is called marginal rate of diminishing returns. It means that when you make so much money at one point, $1 marginal benefit is zero. And if you ask Bill Gates what's the marginal utility of $1, he will say zero. He has so much money, $1 doesn't mean anything to him. It might just be uncomfortable for him to carry in his pocket. So we should understand limits of richness, and we should have ways to change the status quo. If we make anarchy today, the status quo that is today will stay forever, because everybody will have property rights. And just to finish, like the example of the old house with the lady with the old house and the highway, he's just saying that it's better to leave the old lady there and not build a highway. Well, that will make everybody hungry. Maybe you need the roads to bring the corn from the farmers and the meat from the beef guy. But no, we cannot make it because somebody values their house in an amount of money that is not. We can use the free market technique to value the house and pay here a premium. A premium in the California Constitution right now is 20%. That means if your house is worth $1 million, the government can give you $1,200,000. You're gonna make 200 extra, and you can buy a house that is better than the one you have. So there are the provisions there to expropriate people. Expropriation is not bad per se. Anything is bad per se in economics. That's why we have to look at into a lens of efficiency. We can expropriate a house when we need to build a highway, because if not, we're not going to have a highway. And the highway has so much payouts to everybody, including the lady, that we should do it.
Really a lot I wanted to say. I'm really looking forward to the Q&A. Okay, well, let me address the lady question first. Eminent domain. Is eminent domain just? Well, no, I agree with him that people own their home, and if it's their home and they acquired it legitimately, you shouldn't tear it down without their consent. Now you can say, well, you need to build a highway. Well, there are other alternatives. You can build underground so it goes under her house.
How much?
You can build. That's irrelevant. If you either respect people's rights or you don't. Yeah. So I would argue that you can go underneath and do a bridge. You can go above and above and do a bridge, go below and do a tunnel. You can go around it. There are ways to do it without destroying her home. Now, if you believe that the most important thing is maximizing utility for everyone at the expense of individual rights, well then you don't really care about it. You're not an individualist. The individualist is merely expendable to you, and if history has taught us anything, it's taught us that people who don't respect people's stuff don't respect their life. If you look at the most tyrannical society, it's not when they respect property rights. If you're willing to sacrifice people's homes for the greater good, you'll sacrifice their life for the greater good either. And that's not just. Should we kill someone also to give her body parts to sick people? I mean, I think that people own their possessions, and you don't have a right to destroy them, even if it'll make other people better off, which is why no one should be forced to give blood or platelets, even though that obviously saves lives. I believe in helping the weak and the downtrodden. I do. I mean, we've all gotten help on our own. No man is an island. There's this stereotype that libertarians believe we all created wealth individually without any help. Bullshit. We're all dependent on everyone. Everyone in the world is at least dependent on their parents for their own life, being alive. Food, clothing for the first 15, 20 years, you're dependent on other people. So I don't believe that everyone lives in isolation, but that doesn't mean that the community owns it. Now he talks about, well, we have to protect children. Well, there are a lot of abusive parents out there. I think one great way to protect children is if they run away from home, don't force them to come back. Let them get a job, and maybe that job will let them have money so they don't have to be dependent on their tyrannical parents. There are a lot of abusive parents out there who have done horrible things, and the great way is to make their children independent and not be dependent on their parents to protect rights. I guess I don't have any more time, but we do have a Q&A, and I'll answer any questions then.
All right.
So now, their part of explaining without our option is done. So now we've got about half an hour, so you guys finished incredibly perfectly. So good job there, that was awesome. Yeah, thanks guys. Now we've got until noon, because that's when the room's no longer ours. So if you guys have any questions, the way we're going to do this is we're going to ask one at a time, one person at a time. If you wanted to go to both, perfect. If you only have a question for one person, then the next question asked needs to go to the other person, just so we kind of keep their views balanced. Anybody want to go first?
So I have a question for Miguel. First of all, great job in the debate. I really enjoyed it. You mentioned utilitarianism. Wouldn't you say that utilitarianism, I mean, it's the greatest amount of good for the greatest amount of people. Wouldn't you say that's a little biased and subjective when you put it into a calculus? Because you can look at the example of a tariff, for example, the sugar tariff, right? The gains are very concentrated at the sugar farmers in the South. However, most of the burden falls on us, the consumers. And we can all agree that there are more people buying sugar than people that are growing sugar, right? So how would you answer to that?
Well, in that case that you're saying, the social utility function that is based on a utilitarian approach will give you you will be right. It wouldn't be like a tariff to the sugar producers. It will be pretty much it's wrong right now how it is if you follow this methodological approach, because this approach adds the utility of each person and gets a result, and then maybe tries the opposite option and gets a result, and whichever result is higher, that will be picked. I agree it's a little bit subjective in the sense that is a setup criteria, but it becomes positive when you use it as a rule, because like we're not picking which system we're going to use, and that's the nice thing about economics. Economics is based on methodological individualism, that is actually methodological utilitarianism. This is kind of like the same thing, and when they pick it, it was a normative debate between people which one to pick, but they picked that one, and now all economists are supposed to use that analysis, and when you take audience class, you're going to see that it's a difference between a policymaker and an economist. Sometimes economists are policymakers too, but pretty much when you run your analysis, you're not saying which to pick. You're saying under economic efficiency, it will be better to open the border for more sugar. But that doesn't mean Congress has to pick that. They will just take into account the economics analysis that is based on this set of rules we practice, and then they're going to have people like Dan or other people that will just come with their own opinion and try to make a point. And then it's some economists that can actually take this opinion and blend it with their own opinion and try to be in the middle or pick it. But in that sense, you're right, it can be subjective because you can pick any other analysis. We have roles. Roles actually is another way of making collective decisions that is based on helping the guy on the bottom. Our analysis is more like an aggregate demand. Whatever gives more utility as a whole, we pick that. So I agree with you, yeah, it can be subjective, but once you just follow the book to do an analysis, like if they hire you and they tell you, please do a report on the benefit of sugar, you have to follow this, because that's what they're asking. They're asking an economic analysis. So then whoever reads that will have to take the position, and he can take it on the middle. Maybe he doesn't want to affect too much the producers, and then is when it becomes normative.
Thank you. Somebody have a question for Dan?
Yeah, I got a question for you, Daniel. Because Miguel has been characterizing anarchy as mayhem. And we don't see that in places where there's not government forcing us into. I mean, like a very easy area where government doesn't tell us what to do, or even a store. Like in a store, when we line up in lines, we just go wherever we want to go. And people, for the most part, don't cut. People, for the most part, don't screw each other over. I mean, it's a very minimal argument when I'm making, but like, why would you say that anarchy wouldn't be mayhem? Like, how would anarchy deal with that?
Well, first of all, you can't change humanity. Humanity is what it is, and people are what they are. And if the only way there would be chaos under anarchy is if the majority of people are evil. Well, if the majority of people are evil, I don't see how we can say who should become elected should be based on majority voting. I don't see how, I mean, if the majority of people are evil, why would they not vote for evil people? Why would these evil people not get political power? I would argue that government is a haven for criminals, because when government commits violence, it's called the law and they get away with it. So government says a clear message: hey, if you want to commit crimes, take over the reins of political power and you won't get thrown in jail. Okay? He talks about Obama getting impeached. Give me a fucking break. Let's be real here. Okay? That's not going to happen. You know, he talks about Bush getting a DUI in the 70s when Bush was just a regular guy.
Bush was never a regular guy, dude. He's like,
I mean, it's not.
his dad was in the CIA when he got a DUI.
Fine. Maybe the cop didn't know who he was. But I mean, I don't think it's going to create mayhem because people know how to organize. And if they don't, how does government have this information? I mean, he talks about property rights and he says, well, without government, how do we know who owns what? Well, there has to be a theory of property rights to know when government is no longer protecting them and is abusing them, right? Unless he's going to make the argument, government can never, ever abuse people's rights. There has to be some metric you use to judge. How do you judge when government is becoming a protector and then judge when it's becoming coercive? Which means that people already have to know beforehand. If people don't have a system in place to know when government is becoming abusive and is only dependent on government, then you have an absolute tyrannical government. So I would argue that morals and ethics must come before you implement any type of system in place to know when government crosses that line. So that's why I don't think there'll be mayhem, because people self-organize. It's spontaneous order. It's I pencil in that book, in that story by Leonard Reed. I mean, people don't, a flea market is pretty close to anarchy. And it doesn't mean there's no rules. Families have rules, schools have rules, businesses have rules. It's not against rules, and you know, I don't want to impose my will on anyone. If you want a government, I believe you should have your government, as long as you respect the right of dissenters. If you say, I want a government, and it to tax me and it to prevent competition, fine, as long as you say, if people don't want to be forced to fund that which they call evil, and if people don't think the government is a protector and want to find the feds elsewhere without having to move to the ocean, I support the right to do so. If you support my right to have anarchy, I support your right to live under a government. I'm not saying that we should anarchy doesn't mean getting rid of government by destroying the buildings. It means simply let people to compete with you and without throwing them in prison. Okay, and if it does that, then it's not really a government because it's just one of many numerous defense agencies. So I'm not interested in taking away government if people feel that that's their best way of security. I'm simply saying respect my rights to not be a part of that system.
So now I've got a question that's going to go to both of you.
Yeah.
Because you answered first. The first question you get to go first, and then you'll answer second. So it's just kind of a general, vague-ish question. How would you organize government or lack thereof under your ideal world system or state system, country system, however it is you want to characterize it?
Well, I really believe in free markets. I actually haven't decided. I really believe in central banking because I think we need one money, one currency. But the idea of having people putting their own money sounds appealing to me, in the sense that if for some reason government is engineering inflation, maybe somebody can create a more stable currency, right? So sometimes I don't agree with the monopoly of government in certain spheres, but I will organize it. Pretty much what we have right now is kind of working. We need a strong constitution that protects, that is very short. We need a short constitution, but we need a constitution that says exactly what are the rules everybody has to play. And then it will be like an anarchy behind that. Like, we have set a rules like life, personal like value, like no rape, no hitting each other, pretty much the basic things to protect a person's integrity. Then economic freedom, freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom of movement, pretty much all the basic things that are on the UN Declaration of Human Rights. So I think a good constitution will be just the Declaration of Human Rights that everybody has to follow. That way, a dad cannot just say, I don't want my kid to go to school. And a dad cannot just kick his kid out of, when he's 6, like, oh, this kid called me a bad word. I don't want this kid anymore. Go away. A dad has a responsibility on his own kids. So I will organize a society by a constitution. We still need the 3 branches of power because government is not only government Obama, is the Congress that are our representatives, and we have also the judges. So I think Montesquieu was right when he talked about the division of powers. We need those division of powers. So I will go more to the classicals and the people from the Renaissance, the basic idea of balancing powers. But I'm a constitutionalist. I think the Constitution is the base of any advanced society, and we just need to make a very good Constitution that we update no matter what, and make a Constitution so short and so universal that it will never be changed. It will be like we wouldn't have any amendments at all. It will be a Constitution forever, because it will just have basic things like you cannot kill, you cannot rob, property rights, but of course under a collective socialization. We cannot expose the efficiency and the advancement of a country just because somebody values their house. I mean, we pay them for the house, we give them extra, they can move to buy a better house. So the collective has to be above individualistic things. That's why we live in society. We're going to get even more people in this country. That the only thing that scares me is that I agree with Daniel, we should be able to opt out, but it's no free land anymore. So it's nowhere to go. But I believe in freedom so much that I actually believe opting out, it should be in the Constitution. The thing is, where can this person go if he's enjoying our police that we pay for taxes? He's enjoying talking to educated people because we're paying taxes to educate people that don't have money. So that will be a free rider. So if you opt out, where are you gonna go? And in Israel, they have these things called kibbutz, right? And I love kibbutz. I think America should make a way to implement that, because it implements people to self-rely on themselves, growing their own food. But as you see, it takes you a step back, where everybody has to be a farmer, everybody has to be a teacher. So if you want to live in society, it comes with a lot of cutbacks, I guess is a word. Like it comes with non-benefits, like you have to obey the law, cops are abusive, but this makes us work in a capitalistic way, where I can be studying and somebody's protecting me. I can be studying and somebody's waiting for me if I get sick. I can be studying, but the lights are working. I can be studying and I know our highways are straight, and they're not going to kill more land and kill more mountains just because somebody's so greedy they cannot move. Because what is very annoying is that a highway, when you do all that stuff you're thinking, it will make our highway so stupid. Because it's not going to be one person, it's going to be thousands of people that are going to say, oh, my house. So we're going to have tunnels that are $1 million just because we have a house here. And then we're going to take forever to get to work just because property rights they're not like that. It has to be a level of importance. Collective is here, individuals are here. So that will be my utopia.
I'll answer you. I mean, I can address some of that, but you want me to answer your question? Your question is, under my ideal system, can you repeat the question again?
Yeah, what would be your ideal system?
What would be my
utopia?
Free market anarchy would be. Now, I think your question was, correct me if I'm wrong, is how do you set it up or whatever? That's easy. I wouldn't. I don't believe in central planning, so I can't advocate for it. Because your question is, in the absence of central planning, how would you centrally plan things?
No.
Well, it's not really the absence of central planning. I believe in self-organization. I believe in free will. People themselves organize. They're not chess pieces that you move on a board and manipulate. I believe in the Leo Tolstoy quote, every man thinks of changing the world, no one thinks of changing himself. That means don't tell people what they should do or shouldn't do. Change yourself and be a role model. Now he talks about you're going to have all these people who are not going to want to move. This idea that the only way to get people to do things is based on coercion is bullshit. Peer pressure and social pressure is so effective. That's how most of us act. Most of us wear clothes because of social pressure. Most of us behave in numerous ways because of social pressure. How many people say to a woman, nice tits? Is because there's a law against it? No, because we know what's going to happen when we say that. Social pressure is what makes most of us act the way we do. You don't need the violence of the state to get people to do things. If everyone's saying, hey, you're not moving, you're making it difficult for everyone, this person can be a pariah, people are not going to want to do business with this person. There are ways to now, it's not universal, maybe the person's just stuck up and is antisocial, but that's a rarity, that so many people are just going to be antisocial. So, there are ways to get people to do things. I think social ostracism and social pressure is way more effective than laws. I mean, most of us don't do a lot of the things because we want to be loved, and we know that if we act like a dick, people are not going to like us. Now he talks, and then, because I want a lot of questions to be asked, but let me just end here. He talks about a constitution. There's a great video, I'm blanking on the name of it, where a guy reads constitutions throughout the governments that exist, many of which are tyrannical dictatorships. A constitution is a piece of paper with words on it. If I'm walking down the street and a guy's about to kill me and I says, hey, it says here you don't have the authority to kill me, he's not going to say, oh, I didn't know. Pieces of paper don't protect diddly squat, no matter what the Constitution says. Now, is a government with a Constitution better than one without one? Yeah, because the Constitution serves as people saying, look, the government's not even following their own laws. But that's it. It's not useful in terms of protection. It can't protect you. It's words on a piece of paper. And in the words of my favorite anarchist, Lysander Spooner, anything the government wills will of course be determined to be constitutional if the government itself is able to judge the constitutionality of its own acts. Those who are capable of perjury are capable of tyranny to sustain it. So a constitution, no matter what, is not a protector.
Actually, I would like to direct a question. I'm going to try to phrase this correctly. So to put this in a very specific context, have you guys seen, there's this really interesting documentary, I think it's by Michael Moore, I'm not sure, about the 2011 recession? No?
By Michael Moore?
I think, I'm not sure.
Is Capitalism a Love Story? Or
I
what's it called?
think that's what it's called, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Basically it deals with the 2011 recession. You guys are aware of people losing their homes and so essentially it states that economists and government knew what was happening. However, there were multiple warning signs and warnings placed before the actual recession hit. However, no steps were taken to really prevent the recession. Basically, that unbridled greed was what led to the recession. But companies betting against their own companies, employees betting against their own companies, and just this chain of events. So my question would be what concrete steps can be taken to prevent recessions and depressions, and how can we just generally improve the economic well-being from both perspectives?
Sure, I'll go first. Why not? Well, first of all, if you have a mentality of too big to fail, you're going to have banks making bad decisions. If you ever play the trust game, you fall back, you say, I trust my friend's going to hold me, and if you trust, you're going to let yourself fall. But if you don't trust, you're not going to let yourself fall. If the government says, we'll come to the rescue, that's bad. Let banks fail when they make bad decisions, and then that shows a warning sign saying, uh-oh, government's not going to rescue me, I'm going to make better decisions. So this too big to fail is what contributes to a lot of it. Now, I would argue that really the only thing that causes recessions and depressions of any real magnitude and severity is the business cycle. And the only thing that causes the business cycle is an increase in the money supply. Inflation. That is pretty much government phenomenon, printing money, and that's what causes recessions and depressions. It certainly wasn't the free market. I actually like Michael Moore's films. I think he's talented. I think he's entertaining. I disagree with a lot of what he says, and even when I agree with some of what he says, he identifies the wrong people responsible for it. But I like that there's a filmmaker like Michael Moore out there. And I think that this idea that it was a free market institution. I mean, government were giving banks all sorts of incentives, lend to people who can't afford houses, and it created a housing boom. And so that I think is a problem.
Well, he has a mistake when the business cycle is not correct about inflation. It's a well-known fact now that it's called the neutrality of money. So nominal variables cannot have any effect in real variables. So the business cycle doesn't have anything to do with inflation. But 2011, I really believe that we have to change our ethics. In that I agree with Daniel. I think we are confusing capitalism with consumerism. I think we live in a consume economy that is making products to last like 1 year, so you have to buy the next one. So it's killing our natural resources. We should go back to be more frugal. Like a frugal society is where we have to head. Because we're having more humans every single year. We're eating too much meat. That's kind of like out of the subject, but if you care about environmental discussions, is kind of like said that if we only eat vegetables, we could have like 3 times the population we have. But right now, the way we're eating meat and how we're making corn to become ethanol, it is destroying pretty much all the mountains, and we're pretty much gonna end up just having cows. Everything that you're gonna see green is just pasture and corn, and that's not right for the environment. That's gonna pretty much destroy the world. So we have to just change our system, because I mean, one thing government doesn't have to do. Government can be, as I was telling when we start, Hitler had a government, and Stalin had a government, and Fidel Castro has a government. So we shouldn't equate government with our current system, and we shouldn't even think our system is capitalist per se, because capitalism is just division of power, division of labor. So it's kind of like implies economy of scale. That's what capitalism means. Accumulation of capital. That means getting like factory elements, because capital in economics just means any machine capable of making a product. So for me, the crisis is a moral crisis based on consumerism that is based on just wasting things. We need to get over that stage. And also, we work on a mixed economy, so I agree with Dan when he was talking about moral hazard. That is the fact that if you tell the banks you're going to save them, they're going to make more loans. But at one point, it's pretty much recognized by any economist that has any decent position that Obama did the right thing. He might not have done the right amount, give the money to the right people, but if he didn't save some of these banks, it would have created a bank run. So it was getting there. Like, I mean, Goldman Sachs collapsed, ANG collapsed, Stern & Burns collapsed, and it was getting to the point that banks weren't trading to each other. So you need what is called that's what it's called. That's where you go.
Goldman Sachs is still around, huh?
Yeah, the Obama, the stimulus pact saved them. So
That's not collapsing.
no, it was collapsing. It was collapsing, and it was going to collapse if you didn't have the help from the government. So I agree it's moral hazard. I agree that these banks shouldn't have make the loans in the first place. But once you deal with the tragedy or the crisis, it's agreed by any economist with any degree. Like, you're not going to find any PhD saying that the stimulus was wrong. Because like
simply untrue.
That's
simply untrue.
And you know why? Because like they can say the stimulus was wrong ex ante, because they can say it was no way to prevent the crisis. Like if you didn't save some banks back in that week, it was gonna create a bank panic. So everybody's saying like, oh, you shouldn't have the quantitative easing shouldn't have started. They save the banks and that's it. But if you look at the data right now, we are reducing unemployment and we're growing. So, and you're going to remind of this, Obama is going to have a great kind of like debate to whoever is going to run in the Democratic side, because he has a lot to show in the economic grounds. Like, I mean, people can talk all the stuff they want, but when we go to the books and we go to the data, Obama had reduced unemployment. He also passed I think it's called the Sobel rules. He has a new rules of regulations that it makes the banks be ready for a bank run. So they have these new regulations that make Wells Fargo and all these banks. It's kind of like, I think it's called a stress test. So it's a test that simulates a run, and their books have to be ready for that. So now it's kind of like a way of having more reserves, but reserve is kind of like it's old-fashioned right now. So now it's not just save 20% of your reserves. Now it's all these statistical models of probability of how many people are going to run to your bank, what will happen if interest rates goes down. So government with all the technology is getting even better at regulating. So to answer your question, like, I mean, I think two things. We need to change our models and our economic system because it's based on consumerism, which is not the same as capitalism. And second, we need real regulation, and we need to get away from the regulation that is too long. Like our tax books, nobody can ever understand that. It's like so huge that even a tax attorney doesn't know it or a tax economist doesn't know it. So same as the Constitution, I think we should just have very short rules that cover everything, and people can make their own rules based on those rules. But pretty much we need better regulation, not less regulation. We just have very bad regulation right now, very complicated, and banks are making friends with the regulators that already, some people are going to go to jail right now because like there's a debate right now in Congress that they were saying why they sell Goldman Sachs and they didn't save A&G. And the answer was that the guy that was delivering the money was part of Goldman Sachs prior to that. So he was friends with all the people from Goldman Sachs. So of course he didn't want to make them lose money. And the guy from A&G is actually suing the government because he wants money to pay their stockholders. Because he's based on equity, he's saying, why did you save, what was the criteria of too big to fail? So yeah, I guess we should just have everybody tell us their opinion.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Not enough time, right? We've got like 1 minute.
Well, we can make it quick. What's the question?
The quick question was, like, I don't have like any education on anarchy at all, so I want to know like what is the like largest example or like of anarchy in a community?
Well, Ireland had anarchy for hundreds of years, maybe even thousands. You had Iceland that had it. The so-called Wild West, which was not actually wild. The year one, the atheist year one. I said the year one once, and someone's like, no, we had government in BC. So I mean the atheist year one, when humans first existed. Most of mankind's history, there wasn't a government. And so, that's...
Well, then, what would you call, like, tribalism isn't government at all?
Well, I'm not a fan of tribalism. I mean, well, if it's coercive, certainly it is government. But if it's not coercive, yeah, I mean, one of the things that Miguel mentioned was, well, under anarchy, no one would go to court. I mean, if we have private courts, why would you agree to go to court? And this is a very good question. And there's a great book called The Enterprise of the Law, which looks at the history of law. It's called by Bruce Benson, and I well recommend reading. And he says, there were these societies, tribes, but they were voluntary. They had a leader, in a sense, but you could go to another tribe. It was voluntary. You didn't have to join. And if a person said, I'm not going to go to trial. I'm accused of a crime. I'm not going to even defend myself. That person was considered an outlaw, and people said, fine. So when you now complain that you're victimized, don't come to us. And now that tells the world, look, this guy's not willing to defend himself. You can commit vigilante justice, and apparently he's not going to defend himself. That's a great incentive to want to go to court. So to avoid that shit. Anything that you think is crazy and self-destructive, that's a good sign that it's probably not going to be a common occurrence.
That is time. Cool. Thanks, guys.